You don't belong here. The word sliced through the Saturday air like a knife. Shoppers froze, their bags dangling mid-swing, their chatter silenced. All eyes turned toward the front of the department store, where a black woman stood at the counter, calm but unshaken, as the store manager's hand came crashing across her cheek. The sound echoed louder than any announcement over the PA system. Gasps shot through the crowd. A child clutched his mother's leg. An elderly man whispered, "Lord have mercy." Phones rose instantly, screens glowing like fireflies, recording the scene before the truth could even form in words. Her name was Lena Carter. But in that moment, stripped down to what they thought they saw, just a black woman standing in an upscale store, she was invisible. The slap was not just skin against skin. It was history repeating itself. It was generations of dismissal packed into one violent gesture. The manager sneered. "Trying to pull one over us, huh? Women like you always up to something. Get out before I call the cops." His words dripped with contempt, the kind that wasn't just about her actions, but her very presence. He didn't ask for her name, didn't ask for her receipt, didn't bother to check. To him, her dark skin was evidence enough. The room glowed like a sanctuary dimmed by prejudice. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a cruel irony across shelves stacked with luxury handbags and fine silk dresses. It was supposed to be a place of elegance, but at that moment it felt like the Jim Crow South had risen from the grave and settled between the perfume counters. Lena's hand touched her cheek, but her eyes did not water. Her grandmother had marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. Her father had been spat on while trying to register to vote. She had been raised on the stories of courage carved out of humiliation. And so she stood tall, shoulders squared, her voice low but clear. "Is that how you treat all your customers, or only the ones who look like me?" The crowd murmured. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others nodded, anger rising. A teenage boy in the back whispered, "That's messed up," as he started a live stream. His screen blinked to life, live, woman slapped in luxury store. Within seconds, viewers climbed into the hundreds. But the manager wasn't done. His arrogance inflated by the silence of those too afraid to intervene. "You think you can walk in here, dressed like that, and demand respect? This isn't your neighborhood. You people need to learn your place." The words stung more than the slap. Not because Lena believed them, she had heard them her entire life, but because the same venom that had poisoned her ancestors' dreams was now being poured fresh in 2025, right in front of a crowd of strangers. Have you ever been judged before you could even speak your truth? Have you ever been silenced, not with words, but with a single dismissive gesture? That was Lena's reality in that moment. And it was a reality that every black elder watching from their homes, every grandchild hearing the stories of segregation, knew deep in their bones. Lena straightened her spine. She would not give him the satisfaction of flinching. She would not cry. She would not shout. Dignity was her weapon now. But the crowd stirred. A woman in a church hat stepped forward. "Sir, you can't treat her like that. She didn't do nothing wrong." "Stay out of this, ma'am," the manager barked. "This is store business." "No," the woman said firmly, her voice carrying the cadence of Sunday sermons. "This is about respect." Phones continued to rise. Every angle, every moment, captured. The crowd was no longer silent witnesses. They were jurors, ready to deliver judgment in the court of public opinion. And yet, the manager smirked. His hand rested casually on the counter as if daring anyone to challenge his authority. "Go ahead, record all you want. By the time the police get here, she'll be in handcuffs, and you'll see who's really in charge." The arrogance, the certainty in his voice, sent a chill across the room. Lena inhaled deeply. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "Call them. Please. Let's see what happens when the truth comes out." The crowd gasped again. This was not the reaction they expected from a woman who had just been slapped, insulted, and threatened. There was something in her tone, a quiet confidence, a knowing strength, that unsettled the manager, even if he couldn't name it yet. Whispers spread like wildfire through the aisles. She doesn't seem scared. Who is she? She must be somebody. But the manager doubled down, waving at a security guard. Get her out of here. Now. The guard hesitated, eyes darting between Lena and the growing sea of recording phones. He wasn't sure whose side to take. He knew the store had cameras, but nothing could erase the footage already streaming live. The tension was a rope pulled tighter with every breath. Lena knew the moment of truth was near. She could feel her grandmother's voice whispering through her memory, "Baby, sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting. Hold your ground, and they will reveal themselves." She looked the manager dead in the eye, her silence more powerful than any scream. The crowd waited. Then came the sound, faint at first, then growing louder. The whoop of sirens, closing in fast. Red and blue lights flashed through the front glass windows, painting the store in strobing shadows. The manager smiled smugly. Finally. Now you'll see what happens when you cross the wrong man. The crowd pressed closer, phones high. Lena didn't move. She didn't blink. Because she knew something the manager didn't. And in just a few minutes, the entire world would know too. The sirens grew louder, rattling the glass doors, bouncing off marble floors, filling the luxury store with a storm of sound. The crowd shifted uneasily, phones still raised, hearts beating faster. For many, this was déjà vu. They had seen these scenes before, black bodies humiliated, authority misused, dignity crushed under the weight of arrogance. The manager adjusted his tie, smugness plastered across his face. There they are, he sneered. Now you'll learn your lesson. Lena stood perfectly still, her red dress glowing under the chandeliers. She did not tremble. She did not move. She had learned long ago that power was not always about volume, sometimes it was about silence, sometimes about presence. Her silence, in this moment, was thunder. The glass doors swung open, and two uniformed officers entered, their boots striking the floor with measured rhythm. One was tall, broad-shouldered, his expression unreadable. The other, younger, scanned the crowd nervously as dozens of phones pointed at him. "Officers," the manager called, his voice dripping with false authority. "Thank goodness you're here. This woman," he jabbed his finger toward Lena, "was attempting to commit fraud, trespass, and she assaulted me. I demand you arrest her immediately." The crowd erupted in disbelief. "That's a lie," shouted the woman in the church hat. "We all saw what happened." "You slapped her," another man yelled. "We've got the video." But the manager waved them off like gnats. "These people. They're nobodies. Don't listen to them. This woman doesn't belong here, and she needs to be removed from the premises." The older officer turned his gaze on Lena. For a long moment, the room held its breath. His eyes searched her face, then dropped to the phone clutched in her hand, buzzing with dozens of notifications. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "can you tell us your side of the story?" It was a small gesture, but it shifted the atmosphere. Asking her side was already more than the manager expected. He barked, "Why are you wasting time? Arrest her now." Lena's voice came, calm but cutting. "You saw how quick he was to speak for me. To erase my words before they left my lips. That's the world I live in every day." The crowd murmured in agreement. The phones zoomed closer. The live stream comments exploded, "She's so composed. This is powerful. Don't let them silence her." "Ma'am," the younger officer said, more gently, did he put his hands on you?" Lena lifted her chin. The sting of the slap still burned, though she refused to touch her cheek again. "He did. And not just his hand. His words. His assumptions. His prejudice." The older officer's jaw tightened. He looked around the room, the sea of phones, the recording lenses, the witnesses nodding in unison. Something about this wasn't adding up. But the manager scoffed. "Officers, ignore this performance. I'm the manager here. I run this store. And I'm telling you, she's a criminal. She should be in cuffs, not preaching to a crowd." Lena's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping lower, almost like a hymn sung in the dark. You think you run this store? The words hung in the air. The crowd stiffened, sensing a shift. Her tone wasn't defensive. It was something else, something steadier, more dangerous. The manager sneered. Of course I do. My name, my authority, my rules. Lena let the silence stretch, then said softly, we'll see about that. The officers exchanged a glance. Something about her composure unsettled them. They were used to fear, to anger, to tears. But this woman, she was unmovable, as if she knew a secret no one else in the room did. A teenage boy near the front whispered into his live stream, she's not scared. She knows something. Y'all, I think this about to get crazy. The older officer cleared his throat. Sir, he said to the manager, do you have any proof of your claims? Receipts? Reports? Proof? The manager laughed, high-pitched and ugly. I don't need proof. Look at her. He jabbed his finger again at Lena, his voice rising with the same venom that had echoed through centuries. People like her don't belong in places like this. The crowd gasped audibly. Even the younger officer flinched. The words weren't just prejudice, they were raw, unmasked hatred. Lena finally spoke again, her voice carrying the weight of her ancestors, the wisdom of generations. And there it is. Not evidence. Not facts. Just skin. Phones trembled in hands. Some viewers watching the live stream began typing furiously, expose him. Show them who you are. The manager rolled his eyes. Enough of this circus. Officers, drag her out before this mob gets any louder. The officers hesitated. They weren't sure where to move, which way to turn. On one side, the entitled manager demanding obedience. On the other, a woman radiating quiet authority, and a crowd armed with cameras that could destroy careers with a single upload. Ma'am, the older officer said finally, do you have identification? Something to verify who you are. The store fell silent. The question lingered like incense after a prayer. Lena's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. Her hand moved deliberately, slowly, reaching for the leather folder tucked into her bag. The manager smirked. Good. Now we'll finally expose her. But Lena's voice, low and steady, cut him down before the folder even opened. Expose me, she said. No, sir. What I'm about to reveal, will expose you. The crowd leaned in. Phones zoomed closer. The livestream viewer count ticked past 50,000. And as Lena's fingers touched the folder, as she began to slide it open, the room fell into a silence so heavy it seemed to bend the very air. Because everyone knew, something extraordinary was about to be revealed, the room was so silent, you could hear the faint hum of the lights above, the steady buzz of phones capturing history in real time. Lena's hand hovered over the leather folder like a priest about to open sacred scripture. The manager folded his arms, arrogance oozing from every pore. Yes, show them, he sneered. Let's put this nonsense to rest. You'll see she doesn't belong here. She's nothing but a fraud. A woman in the crowd gasped. Fraud? She's the one who got slapped. Quiet, the manager barked, snapping at the crowd as though they were unruly children. This is my store, and I'll decide who belongs in it. But Lena's voice rose, steady and strong, every syllable carrying a weight that silenced him instantly. Your store, she said softly. That's an interesting choice of words. The crowd murmured. The younger officer leaned forward slightly, as if drawn by a gravitational pull he couldn't resist. Even the older officer's expression flickered, curiosity replacing indifference. Lena slid the folder open with a slow, deliberate motion. Inside lay a set of pristine documents. Embossed with seals, signatures glimmering under the lights. She pulled out the first page, lifted it high enough for the cameras to catch, and began to read. Corporate registration certificate, she announced, her voice echoing like a preacher reading scripture. Filed under Carter Global Enterprises, parent company of the luxury brand you stand in right now. The manager frowned, confusion flashing across his face. What does that have to do with anything? Lena's eyes locked on his, sharp as a blade. Keep listening. She flipped to the second page. Shareholder records. Voting rights. Corporate majority stake, held by myself, Lena Carter. The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, murmurs, all blending into a wave of disbelief. Phones zoomed in on the page, live stream comments exploding like fireworks. Wait, she OWNS the store. He slapped his boss. This man is finished. The manager stumbled back a step, his arrogance cracking for the first time. This is ridiculous. You forged those documents. Anyone can print paper. But Lena's laughter, low, melodic, dangerous, cut through the air. Forged? Would you like me to call the head of corporate finance? Or perhaps the board of directors? Because they all know exactly who I am. The younger officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, are you saying you're the majority owner of this company? I'm not saying it, Lena replied, her gaze sweeping the crowd, her words landing like hammers. I'm proving it. The older officer nodded slowly, recognition dawning. I've heard that name before, he muttered. Carter Global, that's one of the biggest holding groups in the state. Yes, Lena said. My family built it. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. Sweat by sweat. And today, I walked into one of my own stores, only to be told I didn't belong. Her voice rose now, filling the space, trembling with righteous fire. I was told my skin made me a suspect. I was slapped for daring to exist in a place that my own hands built. The crowd thundered with applause, their voices rising like a choir. Tell it, sister, someone shouted. Yes, cried another. The manager, red-faced and trembling, tried desperately to regain control. Lies. This is a stunt. She's a nobody trying to trick you all. Officers, don't listen to her. She's dangerous. But the officers weren't listening to him anymore. The younger one spoke first. Sir, you need to calm down. There are witnesses. There are recordings. And now we have evidence that she owns this business. The older officer nodded, his voice firm. We're going to need you to step aside, sir. The manager's jaw dropped. Step aside. I'm the victim here. No, Lena said, her eyes burning like coals. You're the perpetrator. And every word, every gesture, every ounce of your arrogance has been recorded for the world to see. She turned to the crowd, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. How many times has this scene played out, unseen and unheard? How many black men and women have been humiliated, dismissed, assaulted, without a camera to capture the truth? But today, the world is watching. The live stream count passed 80,000. National outlets began cutting into broadcasts, streaming the feed. The story had already left the store, it was in living rooms, in offices, in the hearts of a community tired of being silenced. The manager, sweating now, tried one last desperate tactic. This is all a setup. You think you can destroy me with your fake authority? Well, I'll call the regional director right now and have you. Do it, Lena interrupted, her tone sharp as glass. Call him. Better yet, she reached into her folder, pulled out her phone, and held it high. He's already on speed dial. Because he reports directly, to me. The crowd erupted again. The manager's phone slipped from his hand, clattering to the marble floor. His mask of superiority was gone, replaced by naked panic. But Lena wasn't finished. She leaned closer, her words aimed directly at him, though everyone could hear. You thought you could strip me of dignity. But all you did was strip yourself of power. And now, you're about to learn what accountability feels like. The room vibrated with anticipation. The manager shook his head, backing toward the counter as if he could disappear into the shelves. But just then, the older officer's radio crackled. A new voice came through, authoritative, commanding, unmistakable. This is Commissioner Daniels. We've been briefed on the situation. Do not, under any circumstances, remove Judge Carter from the premises. She is the owner of that property. Secure the scene until my arrival. Judge Carter. The words dropped like thunder. The crowd froze. The livestream comments erupted. She's not just the owner, she's a judge too. Oh my God, she's untouchable. The manager collapsed into a chair, staring blankly, the realization finally breaking him. And Lena? She stood taller, her red dress blazing under the lights, her voice calm as a hymn. You wanted to expose me, she said softly. But all you've done, is expose yourself. The wail of sirens cut through the murmuring crowd. Blue lights painted the polished glass windows in strobing flashes. Phones lifted higher as anticipation reached a fever pitch. Everyone knew this moment was no longer just about one arrogant manager, it was about the system itself. Lena stood firm, her red dress glowing beneath the ceiling lights, the folder still in her hand. Her eyes never left the trembling manager, whose confidence had drained faster than water through broken glass. Ma'am, the younger officer said softly, the commissioner is on his way. What would you like us to do in the meantime? Lena tilted her head, her calmness sharper than any shout. What I'd like, she said, is for him to sit quietly. Right there. In front of the people he tried to humiliate. The older officer turned to the manager. Sir, you heard her. Take a seat. I won't. Sit down, the officer barked. The crowd erupted in cheers as the once powerful man sank into a chair, shoulders slumped, face pale. He looked small now, almost pitiful, like a child caught stealing candy in front of the whole neighborhood. But Lena knew better. This wasn't pitiful. This was justice unfolding. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, her hands trembling as she held up her phone. Miss Carter, Your Honor, people need to hear this. They need to hear how many times this has happened before. Lena nodded slowly. She turned to the live stream cameras and spoke, her voice weaving like a hymn through the silence. Today, I walked into one of my own stores and was told I didn't belong. I was insulted, ridiculed, struck. And why? Because to him, she gestured toward the manager, my skin, my presence, my very existence screamed criminal rather than owner. Gasps rippled. The live stream viewer count ticked past 150,000. News outlets from across the country cut into regular programming, flashing the Chiron, store manager accused of assaulting black business owner. The doors slid open with a hiss. In strode Commissioner Daniels, his navy uniform immaculate, his expression grim. The crowd parted instinctively. Cameras followed his every step. Judge Carter, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority, my deepest apologies for this disgraceful treatment. You should never have endured this. The manager shot up from his chair. Commissioner. Thank God you're here. She's lying. She's staging this whole scene. You know me, I've been loyal to this company for 20 years. But Daniels didn't even glance at him. His gaze remained fixed on Lena, his posture straight, respectful. Do you wish to press charges, Your Honor? The question fell heavy in the air. The crowd leaned forward. Phones shook in eager hands. The manager's mouth dropped open in shock. Press charges, he stammered. For what? I was protecting the store. The store she owns, Daniels interrupted, his voice sharp as steel. The room erupted again. Applause, shouts, chants, justice. Justice. Rattled the walls. The live stream comments section burned with fire emojis, solidarity hashtags, and outrage. But Lena raised her hand, and the noise stilled. Commissioner Daniels, she said, her tone deliberate, every syllable meant to be remembered. This isn't just about me. This is about every black customer who's walked into this place and been treated as less than human. This is about a system that allows arrogance to masquerade as authority, and prejudice to masquerade as policy. Her words cut deeper than any slap. The manager wilted further in his seat, sweat dripping down his temples. A young man in the crowd shouted, "Tell us what you're gonna do, Miss Carter." Yes, a woman echoed, her voice trembling with conviction. Show them what accountability looks like. Lena's gaze swept across the crowd, then back to the cameras. What I'm going to do, she said, is ensure this never happens again. Not in this store. Not in any of my stores. She turned slowly toward the manager. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your position. Security, escort him out. The gasp that followed was thunderous. 2 security officers, who had been hovering awkwardly by the doors, straightened instantly. Without hesitation, they moved to the manager's side. He fought them at first, sputtering, "You can't fire me. I've given my life to this company." Lena's eyes blazed. "And today, you've taken a piece of its soul. That ends here." As the guards dragged him toward the doors, the crowd erupted in applause. Some clapped. Some wept. Others raised their fists high, chanting words that echoed like a modern-day freedom song, "No more. No more. No more." The live stream count surged past 200,000. News anchors struggled to keep up with the flood of updates pouring into their feeds. But Lena wasn't finished. "Commissioner Daniels," she continued, her tone calm but resolute, "I will be filing a formal complaint, not just against this individual, but against the broader failure of training and accountability that allowed this to happen. And as majority owner of this company, I will personally fund mandatory cultural sensitivity and anti-discrimination training for every single employee under our brand." The crowd roared again, this time not just with anger, but with pride. For the first time, they weren't just witnessing humiliation, they were witnessing reform. The commissioner bowed his head slightly. "On behalf of the department, Judge Carter, will cooperate fully." The cameras zoomed in on Lena's face. Her expression was calm, dignified, but beneath her composure burned a fire that reached every heart in the room. "You tried to silence me," she said, looking into the lens as if speaking to every viewer across the country. "But instead, you gave me a microphone." The crowd went wild. And just as the chants reached their loudest, a new voice cut through the roar. "Miss Carter." A man in a tailored gray suit pushed through the crowd, flanked by assistants with corporate badges. The murmurs spread like wildfire. He was from headquarters. The suit straightened his tie, his face pale. "I just got off a call with the board. We need to talk. Now." The man in the gray suit adjusted his cufflinks nervously as he stepped into the store, flanked by 2 assistants carrying leather portfolios. His presence was polished, but his eyes betrayed panic. The murmurs of the crowd hushed as they recognized someone important had just arrived. "Miss Carter," he said quickly, his voice tight, "my name is Richard Collins. I'm Vice President of Corporate Affairs. I flew in the moment the board called. They're watching this live, every second of it. We need to contain this." Lena tilted her head, her expression calm but unreadable. "Contain." Her voice was steady, but it carried across the store like a hymn. "This is not something you contain. This is something you confront." Collins swallowed hard. He glanced at the cameras, then at Commissioner Daniels, who still stood nearby with his officers. Finally, his gaze landed on the crowd, hundreds of eyes, and tens of thousands more watching online. "Miss Carter, with all due respect," he whispered, leaning in slightly, "if this escalates further, we're talking billions in lost market value. Investors are already calling. The media storm is catastrophic. The board wants a statement, now." Lena leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "Good. Then here's my statement, justice is worth more than your stock price." The crowd erupted in cheers. Phones shot higher. The livestream viewer count ticked past 250,000. Collins flinched at the noise. He tried to smile, but the sweat forming at his temples betrayed him. "Judge Carter, surely you understand, our shareholders, our reputation. Our community," Lena cut in, her voice rising, "is more important than your shareholders. For too long, you've let managers like him," she pointed toward the door where the disgraced man had been dragged, "poison this company with prejudice. You want to protect the brand? Then stand with me, right here, in front of the people." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Collins shifted uncomfortably, but the crowd leaned forward, waiting. The cameras caught every bead of sweat, every stammer. Finally, Collins cleared his throat. Then on behalf of corporate headquarters, I acknowledge your authority as majority owner. We support your decision to terminate the manager immediately. And, we will comply with any reforms you propose. Lena didn't smile. She simply turned back to the cameras. Did you hear that? Change doesn't come quietly in backrooms. It comes loudly, in the open, where injustice tried to hide. The chant began again, rising from a corner of the crowd like a spark catching fire, no more. No more. Soon the whole store echoed with it, voices overlapping, hands clapping, fists rising. Then, as if on cue, another voice called out, this one from a woman near the front. Miss Carter, what about us? What about all the people this store treated badly before today? Lena's gaze softened. She stepped closer to the woman, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Justice is not just for me, she said, her voice low but powerful. Justice is for everyone who walked in here and felt invisible. And I promise you this, starting tomorrow, every complaint, every ignored voice, will be heard. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, ma'am, she whispered, as if speaking for more than just herself. Collins cleared his throat again, fumbling with his papers. We can announce a new initiative. An inclusivity task force. Mandatory training. We'll draft statements for the press. But Lena shook her head. You'll draft nothing without me. You see, today proved something important. This company doesn't just belong to investors in high towers. It belongs to the people who shop here, who work here, who keep it alive. The crowd roared in agreement. Phones buzzed. News vans outside began reporting live updates. Headlines spread across the country, billionaire owner publicly confronts racism in her own store. Just as the energy reached its peak, the disgraced manager's voice suddenly echoed from the doorway. He had broken free from the guards, his shirt wrinkled, his face red with fury. This isn't justice, he shouted, spittle flying from his lips. This is a circus. You're humiliating me in front of the world. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Security lunged forward again, but Lena raised her hand. No, she said calmly. Let him speak. The manager sneered, his voice cracking under pressure. You think you can ruin my life because you own this place? I've given everything to this store. And now you make me the villain because I dared to keep order. Lena stepped forward, her eyes blazing. No. You ruined your own life when you confused prejudice with professionalism. When you thought a black woman's dignity could be dismissed like expired merchandise. And today, the world saw it. The crowd erupted once more, louder than ever. But before security could escort him away for good, Lena leaned in just enough for her words to slice through his arrogance. And let me remind you. I don't just own this store. I own your legacy. Because every time your name is mentioned now, it won't be loyalty or service people remember. It will be the day you struck the woman who signs your paycheck. The manager's face drained of color. This time, he didn't fight as the guards pulled him away. The room shook with applause. Collins, pale and overwhelmed, finally spoke. Miss Carter, the board is requesting an immediate conference call. They want you to address shareholders directly. Lena turned to him, her red dress glowing beneath the ceiling lights. Good. Then let's give them something worth remembering. The boardroom was not made of oak panels and quiet whispers today. No, this boardroom unfolded right inside the aisles of the store, under fluorescent lights, with grocery carts lined up as silent jurors. What was usually hidden behind glass towers and private phone calls now pulsed in the open, for the entire world to witness. A giant monitor flickered to life, propped up hastily by technicians rushing from the news vans outside. Faces appeared in neat squares, directors dialing in from New York, Los Angeles, even London. Some looked stern, others fearful. Each one represented billions in investments, quarterly reports, and reputations hanging by a thread. Collins cleared his throat nervously, his tie crooked from the chaos. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, allow me to introduce Miss Lena Carter, majority shareholder, owner, and the reason you still have a company standing today." The screen buzzed with murmurs. A woman with sharp cheekbones and pearl earrings leaned forward from her square. "Miss Carter, what on earth are you doing? This spectacle, it's destroying shareholder confidence." Lena stepped into frame, the crowd behind her visible like a living chorus. She didn't flinch. "This isn't a spectacle. This is the truth. And for once, the truth isn't being hidden in some confidential report or buried in legal paperwork. It's standing in your store, under your roof, in front of your customers." The silence that followed was not empty, it was charged, tense, like the moment before a storm. Another director, his silver hair slicked back, finally spoke. "Lena, surely we all agree what happened was unacceptable. But must you air this grievance in public?" The crowd booed, the sound carrying like thunder through the microphone. A teenager in the back shouted, "This ain't a grievance, it's reality." Phones tilted closer to the screen, live streams capturing every flinch of the board members. Lena raised her hand, and the crowd fell quiet again. "You see? That's why this has to happen in public. Because for too long, corporate America has treated racism like a liability, not a crime. You settle lawsuits quietly, you silence voices with NDAs, you trade dignity for dollars. Not anymore. Not under my name." A gasp rippled across the board. One man adjusted his glasses, whispering something off-screen. Another froze, her lips pressed tight, unsure whether to argue or yield. The woman in pearls shook her head. "Miss Carter, with all due respect, our responsibility is to shareholders." Lena's eyes narrowed. "And my responsibility is to the people. Without them, your shares are worthless." The crowd erupted into applause so loud the microphone crackled. The chant started again, "No more. No more." Echoing in every corner of the store. Collins shifted nervously. He knew what was coming, and it terrified him. Lena turned back to the camera, her voice rising like a hymn that refused to be silenced. "Effective immediately, I am implementing mandatory cultural and racial sensitivity training across every branch of this company. Complaints will no longer disappear into the void, they will be investigated by an independent review board that reports directly to me. Salaries for frontline workers will be re-evaluated, because respect is not just spoken, it's compensated." The board members froze, their carefully built world unraveling. "Lena, you can't make unilateral changes without." "Yes, I can," Lena cut in sharply. "Because I am not just a shareholder. I am the majority owner. You answer to me. And today, I answer to the people." The crowd roared again, the sound rolling like church choirs on a Sunday morning, like drums of a march pushing forward through history. But then, out of nowhere, a smirk appeared on the silver-haired director's face. "You're emotional, Lena. Investors don't like emotion. They like numbers. If the stock drops tomorrow, if our partners walk away, will you take responsibility?" Lena stepped closer to the microphone, her face filling the screen with calm fire. "Responsibility? I'll take more than responsibility. I'll take action. If investors would rather profit off silence than justice, let them walk. But others will come, those who believe a company's true worth isn't in its stock price, but in its soul." The line landed heavy, echoing even through the digital squares. The boardroom on the screen sat in stunned silence. And then, something unexpected happened. A voice from the crowd joined the conversation, loud and steady. It was Mrs. Hayes, the elderly woman who had defended Lena earlier. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "Miss Carter is right. I've shopped here 40 years, and never once felt seen until today. If this company stands with her, I'll stand with it." Others chimed in, customers, employees, young and old. "We'll support you," shouted a man in uniform. "We'll keep coming back," cried a mother holding her child. The board's faces shifted as the realization sank in. This wasn't just damage control. This was transformation. The very people who filled their pockets were speaking directly, loudly, demanding change. Finally, the woman in pearls leaned back, defeated. Very well, Miss Carter. You have the board's reluctant approval. Lena's lips curved into the faintest smile. Not reluctant. Necessary. Because this isn't about approval. It's about accountability. The monitors blinked off one by one, their power diminished, their authority cracked. Collins looked pale, but in his eyes was something new, not just fear, but respect. Lena turned back to the people. You see. Power is not in their towers. Power is here, in our voices, in our unity, in our refusal to bow. The store erupted again, louder than ever. Phones trembled in people's hands as the live stream surged past 500,000 viewers worldwide. And in that moment, Lena knew, the battle wasn't over. The board might have yielded, the crowd might have cheered, but the world outside was waiting to see what she'd do next. The store had never been so loud. The applause still echoed, vibrating through every corner, every shelf, every beam. Phones were raised like torches in a vigil, their lights catching tears on faces, smiles breaking through disbelief. In that moment, Lena Carter was no longer just a woman wronged. She was a symbol, living proof that power could wear brown skin, curly hair, and a voice filled with fire. But she knew this could not end in aisles of canned goods and checkout counters. Lena raised her hand, silencing the crowd once more. Family, she began, her tone softer now, but no less commanding. What happened here today will not die here today. Because this story, our story, has been told 1,000 times in whispers. At restaurants. At banks. On sidewalks. In classrooms. We've carried humiliation in silence, prayed for dignity in systems designed to deny it. But now, the world is listening. The live stream surged, over 1 million viewers, hashtags flooding every platform. Hashtag justice for Lena, hashtag end profiling, hashtag power in black. Today, I was slapped, Lena continued, her hand brushing her cheek, still warm from the sting. But what he tried to take from me wasn't skin deep. It was dignity. It was humanity. And too often, that slap has fallen on all of us, in one form or another. But hear me now, when you slap one of us, you strike all of us. And when you raise your hand against justice, we will rise higher than you ever dreamed. The crowd roared, tears streaming down faces, fists raised like echoes of Selma and Montgomery, reminders that the civil rights fight was still unfinished. Suddenly, the store doors burst open. A wave of cameras and reporters flooded inside. Lights flashed, microphones thrust forward. Miss Carter. Miss Carter. Can you comment? Do you plan to sue? Will the manager be arrested? Lena turned to face them, calm as a judge, regal as royalty. This isn't about revenge. It's about reform. The man who slapped me will face justice, yes, but his actions are symptoms of something larger. And that disease of prejudice must be rooted out at its source. Behind her, Collins shifted uncomfortably. His empire, once unquestioned, now trembled under her words. I will be establishing the Carter Initiative for Justice in Commerce, she declared. Every corporation under my ownership will adopt new hiring, training, and accountability standards. Every report of discrimination will be investigated. And every dollar made will reflect not just profit, but principle. The crowd erupted again, but Lena wasn't finished. She stepped closer to the cameras, her voice low, deliberate, soulful. And to those CEOs watching, to those boardrooms hiding behind lawyers and PR firms, know this: if you do not change, I will take my money, my power, and my people elsewhere. We are done begging for respect. We are demanding it. We are claiming it. Because it was ours from the beginning. The room shook with applause so thunderous it rattled the cameras. Somewhere in the crowd, Mrs. Hayes wept openly, whispering, "Lord, I never thought I'd live to see the day." A teenager hugged her grandmother. Whispering, "She's making history, just like you told me about Dr. King." But Lena wasn't basking in glory. She felt the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. This wasn't about one slap, one store, one insult. This was about every time her people had been told, "You don't belong," "You're not enough, this isn't for you." Now, she was rewriting the script. The reporters followed her out of the store. Flashbulbs exploded as Lena stepped into the sunlight, the crowd parting around her like waves. The chants followed, "Justice! Justice! Justice!" And then, silence. A young black girl, no older than 10, stepped forward timidly. She clutched a worn notebook against her chest, her eyes wide with both fear and hope. "Miss Carter," she whispered. Lena bent down, smiling gently. "Yes, baby." The girl's voice trembled. "They told me I shouldn't dream too big. That girls like me don't belong in boardrooms. But, can I really do what you did? Can I change things too?" Tears pricked Lena's eyes, but her smile never wavered. She placed a hand on the child's shoulder. "Baby girl, listen to me. You don't just belong in boardrooms. You belong everywhere. And don't you let anyone, tell you otherwise. Your dream is already waiting for you. All you gotta do is claim it." The girl's eyes lit up like sunrise, and in that single moment, Lena knew, the movement had already begun. The cameras caught it all. The tenderness. The promise. The passing of the torch. By nightfall, Lena Carter wasn't just trending online, she was headlining global news. Editorials hailed her as the woman who changed corporate America. Civil rights leaders compared her speech to Rosa Parks refusing her seat, to Fannie Lou Hamer declaring she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And somewhere, behind closed doors in boardrooms across the country, powerful men and women sat in silence, realizing that the ground had shifted beneath them. For Lena Carter, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The slap meant to humiliate her had instead awakened a fire that could not be contained. As she stood on her balcony that night, watching the city lights flicker, her phone buzzed endlessly with calls from politicians, activists, even presidents of nations abroad. But she let it ring. For now, she wanted silence. She thought of her ancestors, of the ones who marched, who prayed, who endured worse and still kept moving forward. She thought of her father, who told her that wealth without purpose was poverty in disguise. And she thought of the little girl, notebook in hand, carrying the future in her eyes. Lena whispered into the night, her words carried by the wind, "This is for all of us. This is our time." And with that, the billionaire who had been slapped became something far greater. She became a movement.